Good morning, everyone. How are you doing today?
Good.
You look fantastic this morning. I can't see a thing. All right, ladies, do you ever feel that trying to get through to your husband is like hitting your head off a brick wall?
Yes.
Because it doesn't matter how many times you say it, he doesn't hear it. And men, do you ever feel that you're hitting your head off a brick wall? Because whatever language your wife speaks, clearly it isn't English. And parents, do you ever get tired of hearing the sound of your own voice, of saying the same thing to your loved one over and over and over again, and no matter how many times you say it, it never seems to reach them? They're hearing it with their ears, they're reading it on their phone, but it never ever sinks in. If you can relate to any of those questions, it's because you've understood that communication is mainly an effort to reach someone, to cause them to do something different to what they were doing before, to behave differently, to think differently, to act differently. Maybe you're trying to talk sense into them. Maybe you're trying to persuade them that you're the right person to employ, that you're the right person to buy from, or the right person to date. And sometimes, often actually, mainly actually, getting through to people is hard. Hard, hard, hard. But I bet you've also noticed that when it comes to getting through to people, some folks seem to have a magic touch. Some folks are just really talented at getting people to buy what they're saying, what they're selling, and what they're offering. And over the next few weeks in church, I'm going to show you how getting through to people isn't magic. It isn't luck. It's an art. It's a science, and it's a theology. Let's start with the Bible. In the part of the Bible written by the Apostle James, he says in one of his opening sentences, "My dear brothers, take careful note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry." Now, a little bit of background. In the paragraph that immediately precedes this sentence, James has been talking about those occasions in life when things haven't been going according to plan. So he's been writing to his friends and he's been saying, "Hey guys, I know about it. I know that in recent months your life has taken a turn for the worst. I know about your job. I know about your business. I know about how those people let you down in that way. I know you've been hurt. And because I know that those disappointing things have been going on in your life, I need to have a very careful chat with you about listening, about speaking, and about getting angry. Because you see, there is a direct connection between difficult circumstances and angry, hurt, fearful responses. And the greater the difficulties are, the greater the danger of these angry, hurt, fearful, difficult responses. And I think you would all agree with that. You know very well, don't you, that it's when you're stressed out and when you're under pressure that's when you're most prone to say the wrong thing. So, for example, the couple who are going through money troubles, the parents who are struggling to cope with a difficult child, often discover that their difficulties provide the raw material for speaking hurtful words to one another. And so when the husband explodes in a fit of rage and throws things at the wall, when the wife withdraws into herself and refuses to speak, it's not that they don't love each other anymore, not really. It's just that life is hard now. And the hardness of it has caused deep emotions like fear, like insecurity, like hurt, and they are always, often expressed as anger. And that's why, having just spoken to his friends about the hardness of life, James then immediately says, friends, take note of this. When life is hard, be careful about listening and about speaking and about anger. Now, anger and the emotions associated with it, like fear, like insecurity, like jealousy, like hurt, like all that deep primal stuff, they're issues that we all have to face. And the reason that I know we all have to face these issues is because, as I've just suggested, they are emotional responses to something. And in life there is always something. It might be a perceived danger. It might be a perceived physical or emotional threat. It might be an actual physical or emotional threat. It might be frustration. It might be disappointment. It might be rejection. Do you know what I mean? There's always something in life that threatens us, that causes us to feel hurt or afraid or insecure. And on those occasions when we get angry because one of those somethings has happened, and that's just our response. Now all of that is 100% pure theology. That's as Bible gets. And you'll notice before we go on that this makes a connection between anger or fear or hurt or insecurity, any of those things, listening and speaking. And I want you to notice that, because thanks to relatively recent advances in brain science, we know exactly why it's difficult to get through to people who are angry or afraid or hurt or insecure. Anyone who is experiencing a primal emotion like that is almost impossible to reach. And we now know exactly why. But before I tell you about the science of that, let's just do a quick, very non-scientific survey. So, let's start with the men. Men, have you noticed that when your wife or your partner is in a really angry mood, there is almost no point in trying to have a sane, rational conversation with her? Is that fair? Okay. Ladies, have you noticed that when your husband is, I don't know, worried about money or worried about something, and that worry is expressed as anger, now's probably not the best time to share some of your ideas about fixing things. Fair? In the 1960s, scientists started to talk about the human brain as consisting of 3 levels. So, to generalize this in a crass way, the consensus among scientists now is that there are 3 parts of the brain. There is the reptilian part of the brain, there is the mammal part of the brain, I think in your diagram that's called the limbic system there, and then there's the top part of the brain called the primate brain, or the neofrontal cortex, I think it says there. Okay, with me so far? 3 parts of the brain. The lowest part, the reptilian part. Slightly above that, there's the mammal part of the brain, or the limbic system. And then at the very top of the brain, the kind of gooey good stuff, there is the primate brain, or the neofrontal cortex. Okay? So, at the very bottom, the brown bit in this diagram, scientists call this part of the brain the reptilian brain. This is the lowest and, we believe, oldest part of the human brain. And it's called the reptilian part of the brain because this is the part of your brain that allows reptiles to do the things that reptiles do. So this is the part of the brain that has to do with basic survival. This is survival 101 brain. This is the part of your brain that tells you stuff like, remember to breathe. Remember to stay warm. Remember to have a place to live. Remember to stay cool in the summer. Right? The bits, the things that reptiles can do with their brains, this part of your brain does for you. Very important, survival, keep you alive bit of your brain. Alright? Then, the middle part of our brain above that red in this diagram is called the mammal brain or the limbic system. This is where the fun stuff happens. So this is where we experience things like pleasure, emotion, some of our memories are here. This is where the things that make us us are felt. So think of this part of your brain as being your inner drama queen. Okay, some of you have a very big mammal brain. Right? Right? And then at the very top of the brain, the blue bits, the big bits, the bit that makes us awesome. This is in this diagram called the neocortex. It's more commonly called the primate brain. This is where the clever stuff happens. So this is where your thoughts primarily are. This is where your consciousness is, your language is. Think of this bit of your brain as being like your inner Dr. Spock. So this part of your brain is always on task, always on point. This part of the brain is always able to stick to the subject matter. This part of your brain is into having sane, rational conversation. Your primate brain wants to do its homework on time. It wants to file its taxes early. It wants to finish projects and tidy the house. Somewhere inside you there is a Dr. Spock that wants to get stuff done, to move forward and tick all the bits on your to-do list. It might be buried deep, but you have this bit of your brain. And by the way, this has nothing to do with this morning's talk, but the reason you'll probably fail, there's probably a more encouraging way to say that. The reason you'll probably fail is not because of what you don't know. It's because you don't do what you already know. Write that down, stick it on your fridge. The reason you'll fail is not because of the stuff you don't know. It's because you don't do the stuff you already know. And this bit of your brain, the blue bit at the top, it wants to get stuff done. It wants to move your tick boxes and all that. Okay, with me so far? Oh, okay. What bit of your brain are you using right now? The Bible said, remember what the Bible said? The Bible said when life gets hard, when you perceive that hardness as a threat, as a danger, think about how you speak. Think about how you listen. Because anger is very, very likely when you perceive a threat, when life gets hard. Now, a little bit more brain stuff. Deep, deep in the brain, right on the border of our reptilian brain and our mammal brain, there's a thing called the amygdala. This is a little almond-shaped section of brain tissue that controls a lot of your emotions, especially the ones that have to do with survival. So when you, for example, perceive a threat, doesn't matter if that threat is real or you just perceive it, this part of your brain takes over. When you sense danger, real or imagined, your amygdala takes over, switches your brain onto autopilot, and crucially for our subject matter, switches off our neofrontal cortex or our primate brain. In other words, when you perceive danger, your reptile stroke mammal brain, the bit of your brain that has to do with survival, the bit of your brain that has to do with emotion, switches off the bit of your brain that is capable of sane, rational thought and conversation. So, let's say it's, where are we? We're in a dark car park. You've been at an Ed Sheeran concert at the Air Canada Centre. And you hung around afterwards hoping to get his autograph. It's late. You get to the car park after everyone's already gone. And you're the only one there. It's dark. It's creepy. The creepiness of the environment causes you to be a little on edge, right? Your heart rate is elevated. You walk a little faster than you might. You probably are holding your keys firmly in your hand so you can open your car door quicker or use them as a weapon in the event that you are attacked. The survival tip was free. Now, so far that's fine. That's just good sense. That's normal. You're still at this point capable of rational thought. You're thinking straight. But if you begin to hear footsteps walking heavily behind you, following you, well, now this is different. Now you suffer what scientists call an amygdala hijack. This is what happens when your brain perceives, rightly or wrongly, a threat. The amygdala, as I said a moment ago, shuts down all of the other bits of your brain that are capable of rational sense, and the primal parts of your brain take over. Now it's all about survival. Put another way, brilliantly, I think. When you perceive a threat, real or imagined, your inner drama queen takes over and kicks Dr. Spock out. This is why, when someone is really angry, or really afraid, or really hurt, or really whatever, and they're so taken over by these emotions, it is so hard to get through to them. This is why it is so difficult to have a sane, rational conversation with your husband or your wife when they're angry. This is why it's so hard to have a sane, rational conversation with someone when they're scared and afraid about money or about whatever. When they've perceived some threat in their brain, there's a bit of their brain that's switched off all the other good bits and has taken over. Don't try this. Try walking up to someone in a dark car park, behind them, heavily, breathing heavily, and try in that context selling them a vacuum cleaner. You know what I mean? Okay, so the reason then it sometimes feels like you're talking to a brick wall is because you are. Sometimes when you're talking to someone who is angry about something, or hurt by something, or afraid of something, you are banging your head off a wall. It's not you, and it's not them, it's just science. Over the years, rightly or wrongly, real or imagined, that person's amygdala, deep down in the survival part of their brain, has perceived hurts. They've perceived threats and dangers, and hurt by hurt, threat by threat, danger by danger. They have put up a barrier, and their mind has been hijacked by the threats and dangers and hurts they have perceived or experienced. Snakes are now flying their plane. A frightened bunny rabbit is flying their plane. And until you find a way of reaching the upper part of their brain, reaching the rational part of them, you will carry on banging your head off a brick wall. You've probably noticed by now that when someone is taken over by any of these deep primal emotions, shouting doesn't help. Neither does nagging. Sorry. Neither does lecturing. And neither does preaching. They've erected a mental barrier that's made it hard to reach them. And the harder you hit against that barrier, guess what happens? The harder the barrier becomes. The harder you try, the more you compound the problem. And this is why the Bible is so insistent, I think, on saying, be careful, be careful in these angry environments with the way you listen and the way you speak. Because sometimes, with the best of intentions, we can speak in such a way that makes it worse, not better. Have a look at this. These words come from a part of the Bible called the Book of Psalms. We know they were written by a man called David, and according to tradition, he wrote these words at a time in his life when everything that could go wrong was going wrong. And because he seems to have been aware that there was a connection between difficult stuff in life and angry, unhelpful responses in life, he says in prayer, "Set a guard over my lips, O Lord. Keep watch over the door of my mouth." In other words, See what he's saying there? Life is hard for me right now. I'm stressed, I'm under pressure. My mind is extremely preoccupied, and I know enough about myself to know that when I'm feeling this way, I'm liable to come home from work and shout at my wife and shout at the kids and kick the dog and make everything that's already hard, harder. And so my prayer is, God, in this pressured time, help me say nothing. Now sometimes I feel the opposite of this. Sometimes I wish that I was quicker with my mouth. Do you ever do this? Half an hour after a conversation is over, you say, I wish I'd said that. And I think of brilliant responses that would have cut them down. I think of brilliant things that would have been so clever they would have had no comeback to say. But from this perspective in the Bible, the smart person isn't the person who can always think of something smart to say, or who always has an opinion that they can brilliantly articulate. On the contrary, the smart person is the person who knows how to say very little. Sometimes our greatest accomplishment, the bit where we achieve the most, is by saying the least. In that vein, the writer of the book of Proverbs says this: he who guards his lips guards his life, but the man who speaks rashly comes to ruin. And you just know, don't you, that the man who wrote these words has seen people get themselves into all sorts of trouble, not because of the stuff they did, but because of stuff they said. They didn't have a filter between their brain and their mouth. And that filter is never needed more when life is hard and communication is hard because of the hardness. Because remember, when someone is angry, they're angry for a reason. It doesn't matter if it's legitimate or not. When someone is hurt or afraid or worried, it's for a reason. It doesn't matter if it's legitimate or not. It doesn't matter if they're imagining it or not. It's a reason. And the harder you come at them, the angrier you come at them, the worse you make it. And that delicate balance is reflected in this scripture. God, help me not to say wrong stuff. Help me not to spoil things and make things worse with my words. So here's the situation. You're trying to get through to someone. You are. You're trying to get through to them with the best of intentions. But they've put up a barrier that makes getting through to them almost impossible. And that impossibility is compounded by the fact that your communication methods, rightly or wrongly, have been perceived by them as a threat. So what you have to do is you simply have to find a way around the barrier that they have erected. You have to find a way around the barrier that they have erected. Would you like me to teach you how? I'm going to do that next Sunday. But to get you ready for that, and I need to get you ready for that, I have to teach you about monkeys. Okay? The phrase I'd like you to think about in your communication this week is monkey see, monkey do. Monkey see, monkey do. 20 years ago, a team of Italian scientists working out of the University of Parma, where Parma ham was invented. That was good. That was good. So a team of scientists working out of the University of Parma, they were studying the brains of monkeys, and they noticed that certain cells in a monkey's brain fired whenever a monkey did something. So the monkey would throw a ball, a cell would fire in their brain. A monkey would eat a banana, certain cells would fire in their brain. No surprise there. It stands to reason that whenever you do pretty much anything, something fires in their brain. But then, the scientists noticed this. They noticed that those exact same cells in a monkey's brain also fired up when they watched other monkeys throwing balls or eating bananas. In other words, monkey number 1 would watch monkey number 2 eating a banana. Monkey number 1 would react on some level as if he had eaten a banana, although he had not eaten a banana. For obvious reasons, the scientists initially labelled these brain neurons as monkey see, monkey do neurons. Apparently the academic community found that a bit unacademic, and so they labelled the neurons mirror neurons, because these mirror neurons allow other monkeys to experience the actions of other monkeys in their minds. And this discovery mattered in science, because this experiment was then repeated on humans. And guess what? We have those exact same cells too. And recent studies suggest that this is why we're able to feel others. This is why, for example, we're able to sit in these seats and watch Mission Impossible. And we don't just see it, we feel it. We can feel ourselves running as fast as Tom Cruise, looking as good as Tom Cruise. No? This is the part of our brain that allows us to feel empathy. Why is it? Think about it. Why is it that when someone is kind to us, we sometimes tear up? Why is it we get a warm feeling when we feel another person understands us? Why is it that a simple but a genuine, "Are you doing okay?" is capable of moving us so powerfully? The latest research on this subject suggests that we are continually mirroring the world, conforming to its needs, trying to win its love and its approval. Look on Instagram, look on Facebook, it confirms that. And every time we mirror the world, we create within ourselves a reciprocal hunger to be mirrored back. And where that hunger is not filled, it creates what scientists call a mirror neuron gap. And in today's world, that gap is an aching hunger. Most people have this life. Let me describe your life. Do you want me to describe your life, a bit of it? Giving out your best. Day after day after day. That's what you do. You're doing your best. Every day you do your best. Day after day after day. And your best is often met with apathy. Sometimes it's met with hostility. And more often than not, your best is met with no response at all. You're giving out your best and it's just given out into a void. You get nothing back. Nothing. And it creates a hunger within you for someone, for something to say, "Hey, I see you. I hear you. I feel you." Understanding this hunger in another person and finding a way of responding to it is how you're going to get through to them. You see, when you speak, you're probably thinking about what you're feeling and about what you need. And I'm not beating you up for that, because I'm the same. How else could it be? I only know what I need. I only know what I feel. I only know what I want. And often when I speak, that's what I'm speaking, some way or another. To win in those areas in which you badly need a win, to get round that barrier, you have to find a way of reaching what they need, what they want, what they feel. Find a way to mirror that, and the barriers will come falling down. More on that next week. But let me just finish by saying, I know this is hard. When it comes to the mouth and the ears and the emotions, it's hard. It's as hard as it gets, actually. Look at what the apostle says. If anyone considers himself religious. Now in churches like ours, we sometimes say arrogantly that we don't consider ourselves religious. And when we use the word religion, we use it in a pejorative sense to mean, we don't have an organ and we don't have pews. But that's slightly disingenuous, because the word religion, as it's used in the Bible, simply means someone who believes that there is another side to life than this. There is spirituality, there is There is a world beyond this one. When James says, if anyone considers himself religious, he's saying, do you believe in God? Do you believe in Jesus? Do you believe after this life there is another, and that it matters how we live and how we act? Well, if you do, and yet you don't keep a tight rein on your tongue, you're kidding yourself, and all of the religious things you believe are worth nothing. So the point being made here then is that a person like you and I who has faith, but doesn't allow that religious faith to influence the way we speak, and by extension the way we listen, and by extension the way we emote, we are deceived about the very nature of what it is to have faith. What a person believes is supposed to affect what a person does. And in this uncomfortable moment in the Bible, the apostle says, hey, you have to keep a tight rein on your mouth, because sometimes your mouth is your biggest enemy, not your enemy. Now, it's interesting to me, and comforting to me, that James, notice, uses equestrian language here. To talk about a rein in the first century is to talk about a horse. To talk about a rein on a horse in the first century is to talk about something inherently strong and stubborn and awkward. So in this sentence, James is saying two things. He's saying, number one, look, this isn't just a matter of winning in those areas of life where you need to win. This isn't just a matter of getting through to someone. This is a faith thing. If you're a Christian, you need to do this. Your faith should be leaking into the way you listen and the way you speak and the way you emote. And if it isn't, question mark about your faith. Secondly, this is tough. This is really tough. And in acknowledging the toughness, don't beat yourself up about the mistakes you've made in this area. Who hasn't? Who hasn't listened wrong? Who hasn't not listened at all? Who right now is not listening to important things our colleagues and our prospective customers and our loved ones are putting out? Probably all of us are failing in this area. And we're failing because it's tough. So don't beat yourself up. We're going to learn more about this in the coming weeks. And but for this week, just keep in mind, that person you're trying to speak to, they have needs too. They have fears. They have things they're putting out that no one's picking up. Find a way of reaching that, of mirroring that, and see how you go. More detail next Sunday. Thank you for coming. God bless you.